Hello everyone, I'm Alan, also known as McLaren 2009, and today I'm playing Derail Valley. The game just recently on the 21st came out with the Overhauled update, and since that update I've been playing this almost non-stop. I'm up over 50 hours now, all in virtual reality. Basically, I love this game. It was one of the first games that I got for VR. Might actually be my favorite VR game. And it's definitely the easiest one for me to play, because I play it sitting in my desk chair, and even with the free locomotion, I never get sick or feel nauseous playing this. It's the easiest thing to play for like hours straight. The other day, I'm pretty sure I was playing it for like 10 hours. Realistically, I might have a problem. Well, today I'm going to be doing a quick or relatively quick shunting job and doing a brief description of how to play this game. Basically, in 50 hours, I've done a lot. I've gotten most of the licenses now. I can do the longer trains. I can operate both the original shunter, the diesel locomotive. Can't do the steam one, but that one was always hard for me to use anyway. But I guess realistically, before I stop, I'll probably get the license for that. Right now, I'm saving up for the military license. I went with the Hazmat 2 license instead of the military one because the hazmat jobs seem to pay better. Right now, I'm at the harbor factory in town, or the harbor in town. And this has been like my preferred base of operations because it always has a lot of jobs available. And it's also where I got the first diesel locomotive after I unlocked the license. Which brings me to the interesting point that initially the developers did not explain how to start this locomotive, and I spent 30 minutes staring at this thing trying to figure out how to actually start it. Then I discovered the breaker box back here. Turn these on, flip up this big lever, and how you actually start the engine, I found that out completely by accident. I don't even know why, but I started going through here, or I started walking down here, something like this, and then I noticed that the little ball on my controller lit up, telling me that I could interact with something. So I opened up the door, and here it is. Now, I was a welder a while back, and I worked for a company that built train cars. Now, the only things that I worked on were freight cars. But the factory that I worked in, we shared a facility with Norfolk Southern, a railroad company based here in Virginia. And at their part of the facility, they worked on locomotives. So I've seen something like this opened up, without the basically skin on it. I've actually seen what the engine looks like on the inside of this. And it is the second largest diesel engine I've ever seen. The largest was when I worked for a company that built mining dump trucks. Big 400-ton trucks. That is the largest engine I've seen. It's a 22-cylinder diesel engine. Definitely one of the coolest jobs I've ever had. Now, how you actually use the locomotive, it's fairly straightforward. The cab lights make it easier to see the gauges. The bell doesn't work yet. The dynamic brake doesn't work yet. Horn works just fine. Sand, emergency cutoff. The difference between this and the shunter, there actually doesn't appear to be one in here right now, but the difference between them is with the independent brake. With the shunter, it has to be facing, or it has to be parallel to the wall in order for it to be released, and then when you pull it to you, it activates it. Here it's the exact opposite. When it's in, it's activated. When it's facing you, it's deactivated. The train brake is the air brake system for the entire train. It can stop the locomotive, but it's very slow in doing it. The independent brake is meant to stop the locomotive. And then when you actually have a train, it's the exact opposite. The independent barely does anything to stop the train. The train brake is where you get most of the braking force. And then the dynamic brake, when it's actually implemented, I actually just learned what that does today, because I hadn't really played too many train simulators before, and like I said, I built freight cars, so I'm not a train engineer. But basically that means you brake the locomotive using the engine. You reverse the power in the opposite direction and use that to slow down the wheels. Actually a pretty cool system. So doing a quick shunting job, have to go over to the C track. And unload some tankers. My one critique with this game is I really wish these things stayed where you put them. Like, every day it's kind of like trial and error. To get these things where I want them. Getting this remote control was definitely like game changing when I finally got it. Because before I got the remote, something like just getting the train on a different track was a nightmare. Like, the visibility behind you in that is really bad. It's a lot better in the shunter, but I'm an idiot. No, I have to go left, or I have to go right. the visibility is like bad behind you, and it's completely impossible in the steamer. So if you're trying to get past like a switch post, it involves a lot of guesswork. Like, you have to pull forward, get out, see if you've gone back far enough. Is it 2? Okay, it's 2. Okay, so you have to get out, see if you've gone back far enough, realize that you haven't, you get back in, do it again, and you keep doing that until you finally get it right. And then when you actually have a train, it's even more frustrating, because I personally can't judge like the car distances very well. So you pull a couple of car lengths forward, get out, and oh, damn it. Nope. I messed it up. Oh wait, no, I can still save it. But yeah, you pull a couple car lengths forward or backwards and see if you've gotten the last car past the post. But now I can do everything outside of the locomotive. So I can be in this situation where I have the locomotive there, switch post, and I can move entire trains without ever having to set foot in the locomotive. Curse not being able to see straight. Anyway, so the job is I need to get these cars from this track onto this track, and then we're going to go put them into a storage area. Now, the thing that was kind of odd when I unlocked this is the fact that, oh, that's not good. This right here, the coupling mechanism. When they did the Overhauled update, they removed the automatic coupling system from all of the locomotives and replaced it with this manual system. Now, I personally like the manual system a lot better. It makes it a lot more fun and more immersive, in my opinion. How it works is really, really simple. You have this hook and chain system. Each one has a hook and each one has a chain. You basically pick a side, put one on, take the chain, put it over onto the opposite hook, click the button right here in the center to spin this little bolt. Then these are for the air brake lines. You connect those right there, flip the switches so the arrows are facing out, not the X as you see there, and boom, the train is connected. And the thing about that is, let's see, we should be able to see one. Oh wait, no, they might actually be... Oh, that's weird. Huh. Oh. Okay, I guess that's it. Alright, this cylinder... maybe it's not. Because that doesn't look like the right thing. But yeah, there should be a cylinder on each of these cars, and the cylinder controls the brake pressure for the cars. Now, my one complaint is that the brakes are activated by default. So if I didn't tie this into the train, say I just hooked the coupling mechanism, I couldn't move this train. Like, I might be able to pull it a short distance, but the wheels will lock and the train will just stay there. And that strikes me as odd, because why would the brakes be active if they don't have a compressor to put air into the system? Now, you'll notice these wheels on the end of the cars, that's actually for the handbrake. They put them on the cars probably to make it more realistic, but they don't do anything right now. For all I know, they might not be planning on putting that in there. But those wheels, there's also another mechanism that's not shown, but on the inboard side of that wheel, there should be a lever that you flip up, or you spin the wheel to lock the handbrake in place. And then in order to release the brake, you can either spin the wheel counterclockwise, or you release the lever and it instantly drops the chain, releasing the brake. That would be something cool that might be interesting to see at some point. Like, in my opinion, it would make it better, given that the cars are locked in place by default. It would be cool if the handbrake system actually worked. But that's just me. Now, considering that these use more of a European system for like the coupling mechanism, it's not the type that I'm personally familiar with. I live in the United States, and I'm familiar with our coupling system, which uses the interlocking coupler knuckles. But that being said, I do think this system is better for like a game, because this whole system can be operated by one person with no problems. Our coupling system, it can be done by one person, but decoupling creates some complications. And what I mean by that is, look at the back of this car right here. Let me get this track switched first. If I wanted to decouple this car from this car, I would just release this, remove the hook, turn off the air brakes, disconnect the hose. Easy day. But what I would do with the cars that I've personally worked on, there would be a lever that hangs down right here. You would flip the lever up, and that would release, there would be a draft sill and swing arm. The draft sill would be attached to the center sill of the train, basically like a long spine, kind of like that. And there would be a spring mechanism right about here. It's this big thing that weighs like 100 pounds. And we always had like the rusty ones, so they were always like, they needed to be replaced. That's like the one thing you can't reuse when you rebuild the cars. And there's the coupler knuckles. It's kind of like if you held out your hand, you held out your finger, you opened up your hands, held your fingers pointing out at each other, then overlapped your fingers onto each other, pointing into your palms, and then tried clenching a fist. So that way your fingers are interlocked with each other. And then right about here, there's like a pin that drops into place that keeps the coupler knuckle closed. Well, when you flip this lever up, it pops up the pin, and it also pushes open the coupler knuckle on the side on the car that you're decoupling. But the small problem is, if you're not moving the other car away as you do this, there is a small chance that the pin will drop back in place and the coupler just won't decouple. It's really annoying, especially with like the old ones where the mechanisms are kind of failing. But it is better when you're coupling, because it's done while the cars are moving. You open up the knuckle on both cars, and you push one into the other. The impact kind of like forces the knuckle closed. So that can be done by one person. And you can technically decouple with one person, but there's a small chance that it might not decouple. And it's also cool to see little things like these, the steps and grab irons on the sides. Those in particular are really cool because the main area that I worked in the factory, I worked on basically the center sill, the spine for the car. I've built the brake pipes, the trucks, draft gears, and also bolted things onto end frames. The main things that I worked on were either aluminum walled, like grain gondolas, or stainless steel coal cars. Oh, that's the brake cylinder. That one is presumably to unload the tanker. Actually, it is pretty cool that not all of the cars are facing the same direction. Because, like, the brake wheel is only on one end. And the cylinder is only on one section. I never worked on tanker cars. I only ever worked on basically dry goods containers. Basically anything with like a hopper. I also worked on a couple log cars and the occasional, if I'm not mistaken, we called it a hybrid car. Basically, think of like one of those dumpsters you can load on a truck, but with a slightly higher wall, and you can put virtually any kind of solid cargo in it. They're good for all kinds of things. This type of job is really cool and fairly easy to do because it just involves moving things from one track to another, loading and unloading things, and then storing them somewhere else. This one specifically, yeah, it's going to 2 different places, both G and D. I think I currently have that section aligned for G. This and the machine factory are the 2 stations that I've got them pretty well figured out, like where all of the lines go, where each track section is located, mostly because those are the ones I go to most often. And this is kind of like my basically home base. This is where I always come back to. There's a couple of areas that I haven't been to yet, like the coal mine, a few others. Oh, this has alcohol in it. Now, one thing that is surprisingly similar to the real cars that I've worked on is where you have that placard that tells you what the car number is and what train it's considered or what job it's part of. That's very similar to the things that I worked on. Like, we had a sticker right here that said that it was our car that we built. And then on the right-hand side, as you were facing it, there would be like this aluminum bracket that holds a route card. Basically a piece of paper that you put into a plastic bag to keep it dry. And it tells you all that information, like what the cargo is, where it's going, that type of information. Okay, now, in order to do this part, what I need to do is get this entire train back around there and onto the main line, and I'll get it past the switch post over there so that I can back it up along the main line into the next switch, which will go to the G and D tracks. And really, I need to figure out which end is which. Alright, so going to G. Alright, that's 204. Okay, 204 down is going to D. So that means that the bulk of these are going to a G track. DE6 Now, supposedly, let's see, harbor. Alright, so you look at this. Right now we are here at the C track. Actually, right now we're here, roundabout. And we need to get here and here. Let's slow that down. 17's pretty good. Now, these... Supposedly, a few people in the Discord have been saying that a few of these specific section maps don't actually match. Like, the diagrams aren't correct, but I never really noticed because I haven't used the map, the diagram, the specific sections. I just use like the block diagram that tells me where those entire sections are located. The reason being that maybe my memory's just fuzzy, but when I first started playing this game, not all of the stations were laid out very well. And basically some of the diagrams just didn't, or some of the tracks just didn't make sense. Like, I used to end up on the wrong track a lot. Now, the only times I end up on the wrong tracks are when I put a switch in the wrong position because I'm not paying attention. Still happens more than I would like, but that's my own fault. I can't blame anybody for that. Now, you have to give it a couple of seconds to repressurize. Like, we go back up here, get in the locomotive. This brake pipe, when you activate the train brake, the switch over here, it pushes air into or it releases air into the system. And if I'm not mistaken, the cars detect a loss in pressure or a change in pressure, and they activate the brakes. So when you release the brakes, the system has to repressurize, and that takes time. And until the system is fully repressurized, the brakes are still partially active on some of the cars, so it just won't move. Alright, now just to make sure we are going to G, we are. Alright, 6S is right here. Alright, so left. No. You need to be going right. Right. Yep, okay, those are good. Yeah, right, left. Alright, so all of those are straight. Now, as far as, like, the speed goes, it's kind of weird. I swear, it's like the strangest thing. It's gotta be like a bug or something. But you see these posts, just like in the manual, the circled number tells you in tens what the speed is. So like that sign says 50 kilometers an hour. Except this, and there's a few other signs like it around the map that they're just randomly in the middle of the tracks. And not to mention, this one's kind of weird and confusing in and of itself, because that one says 50. I'd assume they don't have an explanation for what that sign is, but I'm assuming it means 50 through the main line, not the offshoot sections, or not the branching sections. And then that one says 60. So can I go 50 or can I go 60? I don't know. But the thing that's weird is on this track, right around here, actually, right where it said, right where that 50 sign is, I came out pulling a train from the D track, and I was trying to get it onto the G track, The train was going approximately 30 kilometers an hour. And a single car in the middle of the train derailed. It wasn't damaged. It didn't affect the car in front of it or the car behind it. Just a single car derailed. I have no idea. It's now happened like 4 times in like 3 different places. I have no idea what's going on or why. Oh, wait. No. And that's what happens when you flick the wrong switch. Now, luckily, train this size, the Independent's not really going to do a whole lot to it. Alright, so going to 6S. We are at 246. Okay, so the last one I need is 819. So for just normal moving around within the yard, I try to keep it under 20, especially for something this size. Now really I need to be standing down here by this. Because as long as the last car is right here, then we're good. Six, 5, 4, 4, 4, 9, 3, 9, 4. 071 028 819. This is our car. Oh yeah, I went off on the wild tangent about the coupling system, but I forgot to mention what I was actually getting at, which is this being on the controller in general. It's weird that they removed the automatic coupling system from the locomotives, but not from the remote. Like, this still works. I can still couple and decouple cars with the push of a button. I mean, I can't really complain. It's a good convenience, especially when you're starting to get like frustrated because you keep derailing like the same random car a million times and you've been doing this for like hours. But at the same time, no, I think they did say at some point that they want to introduce the automatic coupling system as like an upgrade or something like that you can purchase down the line. But it's still on this. Alright, now the next job has to go to D5S. Now this one's kind of like the other way around, so we have to make sure that we're going left, because going right, if you look over here, right is the loading and I think that's an outbound track. Yeah, loading and outbound. In a way, it's kind of weird that we would put a container car over here. And that's another thing. Like this. Alright. The fuck? Why the hell? That's not good. Okay. This train right here, or these cars right here. Now, that train is not very long, comparatively. But this is one of the smallest sidings on this section of track. So the table in the station office is full of jobs to work on. And there's a lot of things that have to go to a lot of different places. And this is part of the fun of doing a shunting job. But you know that these cars have to go on that track. But they may not necessarily fit. And there's like no guidance for where to put those other cars. So you end up just shoving them somewhere, or you just back the train up and push them off that track anyway because they're not associated with this particular job. But and then like if you're bringing in cars from another station, it hasn't happened too many times, but it still happens where I'll pick up a freight job from, say, the goods factory, and I'll have, say, a bunch of empty flat cars, or just a logistics job. Empty flat cars. Now, when you're on that mountain coming down here, when you're about halfway through like that home stretch loop, you'll get like the prompt on screen saying that it's spawning cars. Alright, no big deal. These are obviously going to go onto like an inbound track in either E, G, D. Usually those are the main ones. But when you get there and you get the train turned around so that you're backing into the position, you find out that, oh wait, there's like 6 cars already on that track, and you don't know where you're putting, say, 8 of them. It randomly spawns cars in the place that you're trying to put your train. Like, you would think that even though the cars are essentially the cars and jobs are randomly generated, you would think that there would be a level of coordination between what jobs are required. It's not the first time I've done that. And like where they're going. And then, because I have to take these 5 cars, they're definitely not, or actually I can't say definitely not, but they probably won't fit between that post and the back of that car. So I'm inevitably going to have to push those cars down. Now, you can see there is room. We can probably push those down to that signpost, and everything will be fine. But now I'm going to personally, like, subconsciously avoid any shunting job that moves flat cars because I have to move all of these to get to those. And it's just like, I don't know. What am I supposed to do? And then, not to mention, there's the added bonus of if I had to push these farther than I do, like say they ended up getting pushed all the way down past the sign and onto that end track down there. I would not do a job that involves those. Like, I would look at this and HB LH80, I would not do that job. Because I ended up burying the cars and I have to move everything else to get to them. Alright, let's see. How much... Oh, I guess it almost fit. Alright. Now let's go forward. This is like the least practical place to teleport yourself, but it's just cool. And then, like, on the subject of things that I would like to see in the game, before I got the diesel locomotive, I was doing everything with the shunter. No big deal. Well, the shunter, in the manual for it, it says the shunter can hold 400 tons. Alright, no big deal. Well, when you pull out of the harbor, that entire area, let's look at the map. This entire section, pretty much all the way up to about here, is almost completely uphill. So if you're actually doing a freight haul where you're taking roughly 400 tons, you're going to have to use sand and get up as much speed as you can as you're going up that area. And you'll basically almost burn out the engine. So the one time that I did not have to do that, I had two shunters connected. I was in the cab controlling one, and I had the remote paired to the one behind me. So far, that is the only time that I've never had to use sand getting out of this station. Now, the thing that I'd like to see implemented would be if you had multiple locomotives together, or multiple shunters like I did at the time, if there was a system where, like, the locomotive specifically had a third connector, and the third connector would be like an electrical connector, and you could plug the locomotives together and then flip like a switch in the cab that says, like a toggle saying this locomotive is being controlled remotely from a different cab, and then that activates the electrical connector, and the electrical connector controls the second locomotive. So that way there is one reverser, one throttle, one brake, one train brake, one independent brake, but the power of both engines. Because the process of sitting in the cab and controlling the lead locomotive and then using this to control the second locomotive isn't inherently a problem, except for this. That is a very long trip, and half of it is in the sun, and this thing has a battery and a solar panel in order to function. Not necessarily a problem, but it gets to the point where you have to pick one or the other, because I ended up teleporting myself on top of the train so that I could recharge the battery for this, and then I completely ignored the controls in the lead locomotive because I have to recharge the battery, otherwise I can't control the back one. And just that whole confusing, convoluted process just wasn't overly helpful for me. So I would like an actual proper way to control multiple locomotives. Now, as I said in the beginning, I'm not a train engineer, so I don't even know if a real system like that exists. It's just something that I think would be cool. Alright. Independence active, or independence back on, neutral. Alright. Everything's good. Mostly just when you're starting out. If you take like a bigger job, or you're in an area that has otherwise really rough terrain, and you just need a second vehicle just to get the train moving. Like, I found out the hard way that you really shouldn't come to the harbor town just starting out. Like, this probably should not be your first station that you take a freight haul to. And the reason that I say that... Oh yeah, easy haul. It took me an hour. But the reason that I say don't do that is you look at all of these, long 1, long 2, hazmat 2, long, hazmat, basically a lot of the jobs here cannot be easily done when you're just starting out. Like, you can do this, $5,600, not too bad, but a lot of these are beyond your capabilities. And then even, actually, what is this one? Oh, that one's only 75 tons. Let's try to find... okay, I don't have any examples of it right now. But there were a couple of them that even the shunting jobs, some of them are pretty good size. Like, some of them are really heavy. And you might have a hard time doing it with, say, one shunter. Now, bear in mind that the diesel or the steam locomotive is 50 grand. If you know how to use it and use it well, it would be really helpful to get those jobs done. But the shunter doesn't work very well for, like, long trips. Like, it can get the job done. I mean, that's how I got the 200 grand to pay for the thing. But say I did this. This is about 300 tons. To pull this with the shunter comfortably, I would hook up two. I would grab a second one in order to pull this out of here. But in order to use a second one, that would require me to do that convoluted process where I use the remote control just so that I can operate both of them successfully. But that doesn't work very well. So, yeah. I really love playing the game. It's a lot more fun than you would think. It's just there's a couple of things that I think are kind of weird, like how I haven't derailed an entire train since I started this update, but I have derailed single cars in the middle of a train, and the surrounding vehicles are completely unaffected. And just little things like that, and stuff like this confusing sign over there where there's a random sign in the middle of the track that you just run over, or you just run through it. And then every place that type of thing exists, there's always another sign right next to it that has a different speed value. And then you're just like, okay, what do I go off of? And it's like, why is there a glitched sign in the middle of the rails? Like, somebody put that there. There's a couple of just little things that I just don't get. But otherwise, it's a great game. I really love playing it, and it's a lot of fun. It's kind of relaxing. Sometimes stressful if you accidentally have like a 20-car train that you put on the wrong track because you didn't switch the tracks properly. But that's operator error, and the point is, don't be an idiot. But yeah, that's about it. Thank you guys for watching if you've made it this far. Have a nice day.